This story is titled, My Ex Cheated and Had a Kid. Now she wants me to be the father. Her friends are harassing me. Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. Alright, let's get started. Hey folks, so I've got a story for you. I'll just warn you up front. It's messy. I'm 30 male now, but this whole thing started about a year ago with my ex, Rachel, 27 female. We were together for 5 years. And before that, we'd been close since we were kids. I mean, she was the only one who showed up to my 8th birthday party when everyone else bailed. That's the kind of history we had. I thought I knew her better than anyone, but wow, was I wrong. Rachel was someone I trusted with everything. She'd been there through a lot. Like when I lost my job a few years back, she was my biggest cheerleader. And when my dad was in the hospital, she stepped up to help my mom while I was stuck working overtime. So, yeah, Rachel wasn't just my girlfriend. She was like family. We were even starting to talk about building a future together. You know, getting married, having kids, the whole thing. I thought we were on the same page. But then, out of nowhere, I get this random message on Instagram from a girl named Zoe. At first, I thought it was spam, like one of those fake accounts trying to sell something. But when I read it, I got nauseous. Zoe said she had proof that Rachel was cheating on me. At first, I was skeptical. I mean, Rachel? Cheating? It didn't add up. We'd been solid, or at least I thought we had. But then Zoe started dropping details that were too specific to ignore. She claimed Rachel had been seeing some guy named Liam for a while, and had even told him she was pregnant. That caught me off guard. Pregnant? Rachel hadn't said a word to me about that. Still, the whole thing felt off. Who was Zoe, and why was she telling me this? I asked her straight up, how do you know Rachel? And why are you getting involved in this? Zoe replied, saying she wasn't a close friend of Rachel's, just someone who knows what's really going on. That didn't sit well with me. Why would someone go out of their way to expose someone else's relationship unless they had an agenda? Was Zoe trying to stir the pot for fun? Did she have something against Rachel? She said she was a friend of Liam's and found out about the affair after snooping through his phone. Apparently, she'd seen enough of Rachel and Liam's messages to piece everything together. Zoe claimed she felt bad for me and thought I deserved to know the truth. But was she really being altruistic? Or was there more to it? Her timing seemed too convenient. She reached out to me out of nowhere, armed with screenshots and even a video. It was hard not to question her motives. I messaged her back saying, okay, you've got my attention. Show me the proof. A part of me was hoping she'd flake out or admit she didn't have anything concrete, but she didn't. Instead, she sent a string of screenshots. They were texts between Rachel and Liam, and they weren't the kind of messages you'd mistake for friendly banter. They were explicit, graphic even. Things I couldn't unsee, things that didn't just hurt, they burned. I still wasn't ready to fully buy into Zoe's story. Screenshots can be faked. People do it all the time, right? So I pressed her further. Why are you doing this? I asked. Her response was blunt. Because Rachel's been playing you. Liam's an idiot, and Rachel's not as innocent as you think. Someone needs to tell you the truth. Then Zoe lost it and sent me a video. It was Liam, laughing with his friends, talking about how he'd been sleeping with Rachel and how she told him the baby might be his. My stomach turned. I didn't want to believe it, but the way Liam was talking, the smug tone in his voice, it felt too real to ignore. Even with all that, I still couldn't shake the feeling that Zoe might have her own agenda. Why now? Why me? Was she doing this to help, or was she just trying to hurt Rachel? I asked her one last time, what do you get out of this? What's your angle? She didn't sugarcoat her answer. I'm tired of seeing Rachel and Liam get away with their crap. You seem like a decent guy, and you deserve to know the truth. Do with it what you want. At that point, I didn't know what to think. Zoe's story lined up, and the evidence was overwhelming, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was just a pawn in someone else's game. Was she telling the truth, or was she out to ruin Rachel for reasons I didn't fully understand? I saved everything Zoe sent me. The screenshots, the video, her messages explaining how she knew Rachel and Liam. Whether or not I fully trusted her, I couldn't deny the weight of the evidence. Every screenshot chipped away at the Rachel I thought I knew, and every second of that video hammered home the reality I didn't want to face. I stared at my phone, my mind spinning. I wanted to throw it across the room, to make all of it disappear, but that wouldn't change anything. I kept scrolling through the messages, hoping for something, anything, that would make it all make sense, but nothing did. The Rachel I thought I knew, the one who'd been my partner, my safe place, wasn't real. She'd been lying to me, sneaking around with Liam, all while pretending we were building a future together. And Zoe, whoever she really was, had blown the lid off it all. Whether she was a friend, an enemy, or just someone who wanted to stir the pot, I couldn't ignore what she'd shown me. It didn't make the betrayal hurt any less, but at least now I knew the truth. Or at least, I thought I did. Rachel was out visiting her parents when all this went down, which gave me some time to think. I packed up her things, everything she'd left at my place, and put it in the trunk of my car. I wasn't sure how I'd confront her, but I knew I had to. There was no way I could sit on this and pretend everything was fine. When she got back later that evening, she was all smiles, like nothing was wrong. She hugged me and said she had some exciting news. She told me she was pregnant, and I felt my blood boil. I had to fake a smile and act like I was thrilled. I told her we should go out to celebrate, and she thought it was a great idea. Instead, I drove her to her parents' house. The whole ride, she kept asking why we were going there, and I just said, "We'll talk when we get inside." I needed her mom there for this because I knew Rachel was about to go full denial mode, and I wanted a witness. When we got inside, Rachel's mom glanced up from her phone. "This is a surprise, what's going on?" Rachel, still riding her delusion, chimed in. "We have some big news to share." I shook my head, cutting her off. "Nope, not the news you're expecting." Rachel turned to me, confused. "What are you talking about?" I stared her down. "I know, Rachel. About Liam. About the texts. About the baby." Her smile dropped instantly. "What are you even talking about?" Her mom leaned forward. "Who's Liam? What's he saying, Rachel?" Rachel started scrambling. "He's misunderstanding something. It's not what it sounds like." I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the screenshots. "Not what it sounds like? Then explain this. Or better yet, explain why your boyfriend's bragging about sleeping with you and knocking you up. Make it make sense." Her mom shot up. "Rachel, is this true? Don't stand there lying to me." Rachel started tearing up. "It was a mistake, okay? I didn't mean to hurt anyone." "A mistake?" I said, letting out a dry laugh. "Rachel, you carried this on for 2 years. 2 years. You don't trip and fall into a 2-year affair. That's not a mistake. It's a choice." Her mom's eyes narrowed. 2 years? Rachel, what were you even thinking? And this Liam? He's the father? Rachel wiped at her face, mumbling. "Yes, but it's not what you think." "Stop saying that," I snapped. "It's exactly what I think. You've been lying, sneaking around, and now you want me to what? Pretend this didn't happen? Be your backup plan because he bailed? Number absolutely not." Rachel threw her hands up, desperation creeping in. "I'll fix this. I'll do anything. I'll get rid of the baby if that's what it takes to make things right." Her mom started yelling at her. "What are you even saying right now?" I shook my head, disgusted. "Wow, Rachel. That's your solution? You think you can erase all of this and we'll just go back to normal? You really think I'm that stupid?" Rachel stepped toward me, pleading. "Please, I love you. I can't lose you." "You already lost me," I said, cold. I grabbed the bag of her stuff I'd brought with me and shoved it toward her. "Here. I don't want anything of yours in my house. We're done." Her mom stepped between us. "Wait, let's talk about this. Maybe we can—" "No," I cut her off. "There's nothing to talk about. She made her choices. I'm just here to make sure you know the truth. Now you can deal with her." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I drove home in silence, feeling like my entire world had just imploded. When I got home that night, I sat in my car, trying to process everything. Rachel's tear-streaked face, her mom's angry yelling, and that unmistakable look of panic when I showed her the screenshots. All of it kept replaying in my head like a highlight reel from the worst movie ever made. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath. For a moment, I thought I might completely lose it, but I didn't. Instead, I just sat there, numb. Eventually, I forced myself to go inside. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt louder than any noise. Rachel's things were gone, packed up and dumped at her mom's place, but the emptiness hit differently. This wasn't just a breakup. It was the end of a life I'd built in my head. 5 years of memories, plans, inside jokes, and dreams. All of it was shattered. I walked into the living room and stopped in my tracks. The couch caught my eye. The same one where we'd spent countless nights binging bad TV shows and eating takeout. It felt surreal, like the space didn't belong to me anymore. The house was mine, but it didn't feel like home. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's face, her tears, her desperation, her guilt. I kept wondering how I didn't see it coming, how I could have missed something so massive for 2 whole years. By the time morning rolled around, I felt like a shell of myself. When I checked my phone, it was flooded with texts from Rachel. They started off as standard apologies. "Can we talk? Please call me. I'm so sorry." But by the time I scrolled through the list, they had turned desperate. "I'll do anything to fix this. I can't live without you. Please don't do this to us." I couldn't respond. What was there to say? She didn't just screw up, she burned everything to the ground and salted the earth for good measure. I blocked her number by the afternoon, thinking that would be the end of it. But I underestimated her determination. By that evening, she had shifted to social media, bombarding me with messages. The same routine. Apologies, promises to change, pleas for another chance. I blocked her on every platform. Then, the emails started. Long-winded messages about how she couldn't live without me and how she'd never forgive herself. Part of me wanted to tell her to leave me alone, to stop dragging this out. But another part of me didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin. So, I ignored her. Later that day, Chloe showed up unannounced. She's always been the one to step in when my life goes sideways, and this was no exception. "All right, spill," she said as soon as she walked in, her arms full of snacks and drinks. I didn't even know where to start. But once I did, it all came pouring out. The DM from Zoe, the screenshots, the video of Liam, Rachel's confession, and everything that had happened at her mom's house. Chloe sat there, her expression shifting from disbelief to pure anger. 2 years, she shouted, nearly dropping her drink. And you had no idea? I shook my head, feeling the bitterness rise in my chest. She played me like a pro, I said, the words tasting sour. Chloe's protective instincts kicked in immediately. She doesn't deserve even a second of your time. You know that, right? She said, her voice firm. I nodded, but it didn't ease the ache in my chest. Chloe stayed for hours, making me talk through everything and cracking jokes to lighten the mood. By the end of the night, she was even joking about changing my locks, just in case Rachel gets any ideas. The next day, I told my mom. I had been dreading that conversation because she adored Rachel. For years, she'd called Rachel the perfect match and talked about how she couldn't wait for us to get married. Breaking the news felt like admitting I'd failed somehow, even though I knew deep down it wasn't my fault. When I showed her the screenshots, she just stared at them in silence for what felt like forever. Finally, she said, "She cheated?" Her voice was soft, almost like she didn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. I nodded, unable to meet her eyes. After a long pause, she shook her head and said, "I can't believe she did this to you. To us." That last part hit hard. Rachel wasn't just my girlfriend to her. She was family. My mom started venting about how much effort she'd put into building a relationship with Rachel. It was clear she felt betrayed too, like Rachel had let the whole family down. In the days that followed, Rachel's messages slowed down. Maybe she was finally getting the hint, or maybe she was regrouping. Either way, I didn't hear from her directly, but that didn't mean the drama was over. One night, Rachel's mom called me. Her voice was heavy with embarrassment and regret. "I'm so sorry for what Rachel did," she said. "I raised her better than this. She's devastated, you know. She knows she messed up, but she's still my daughter, and I have to ask, could you at least talk to her?" I sighed, already exhausted by the conversation. "I appreciate you calling," I said, "but there's nothing to talk about. She didn't just hurt me. She destroyed everything we had. I can't come back from that." Her mom sounded defeated. "I understand," she said softly, though I could tell she was disappointed. After we hung up, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief that I'd stood my ground, but frustration that the people around Rachel still thought there was a way to fix things. There wasn't. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. Breaking up with Rachel was rough, but the part that hit me hardest, finding out some of my so-called friends knew about the affair and didn't tell me. They had front row seats to the betrayal and decided to keep quiet. It wasn't just Rachel who stabbed me in the back. It felt like a whole group of people I trusted had turned against me. I found out through bits and pieces after the breakup. One friend, Sam, slipped up during a conversation a few weeks later. He mentioned how he always thought Rachel and Liam had too much chemistry. Too much chemistry? What the hell does that even mean? I pressed him, and it turned out he had seen them getting a little too cozy at a party months before I found out. "You didn't think to tell me?" I asked. "I didn't know for sure," he stammered, "and I didn't want to stir up drama if it was nothing." I didn't take that excuse. If the roles were reversed, I'd have told him in a heartbeat. It felt like everyone had just decided I wasn't worth the hassle of honesty. It wasn't just Sam either. A couple of mutual friends admitted they'd heard rumors, but didn't think it was their place to get involved. Their silence felt like another layer of betrayal. If that random girl hadn't slid into my DMs out of nowhere, I'd probably be raising a kid that's not even mine, thinking I'm some stand-up dad, while she kept sneaking around with her side guy. Anyway, fast forward a year, and I was finally starting to move on. I had started to feel like myself again. I was going out with friends who actually cared about me, focusing on work, and even dipping my toes into dating. Life wasn't perfect, but it was stable, and I was okay with that. Then recently, out of nowhere, Rachel messaged me. The first time, it was just a simple,
Hey, can we talk? I didn't even open it. I blocked her immediately. Whatever she had to say, I didn't need to hear it. A few days later, though, she showed up at my door. I saw her through the doorbell camera before she even rang the bell. And I won't deny, she looked awful and messed up. Part of me almost didn't recognize her. This was a far cry from the Rachel I used to know, the one who always seemed so put together. I didn't open the door. I didn't even step outside. I spoke to her through the camera. "What do you want, Rachel?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked directly at the camera, her eyes welling up. "I just need to talk to you," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, let me in." "No," I said flatly. "You've got no business being here. Say what you need to say and then leave." She started crying, which I'll admit made me feel a little uncomfortable, but then she said that Liam had ghosted her. Apparently, he disappeared shortly after their kid was born, leaving her to handle everything on her own. To make matters worse, her parents had kicked her out, saying they were tired of cleaning up her messes. "I don't know where else to go," she sobbed. I thought maybe you could help me." That was it. I felt whatever pity I had bubbling up vanish in an instant. "Help you?" I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You want me to help you take care of the kid you had with the guy you cheated on me with? Are you serious right now? Please," she begged. "I don't have anyone else." I stared at her through the camera, trying to process the audacity of what she was asking. This was the same woman who lied to my face, betrayed me for 2 years, and expected me to pick up the pieces of her broken life like nothing happened. "Rachel," I said, my voice cold, "you made your choices. You chose Liam. You chose to lie. And now you're dealing with the consequences. That's not my problem. It hasn't been my problem since the day I packed your things and drove you to your mom's house." She started crying harder, but I wasn't moved. "You need to leave," I said firmly. "And don't come back. Don't message me. Don't call me. As far as I'm concerned, you don't exist anymore." For a moment, she just stood there, looking at the camera like she was waiting for me to change my mind. When I didn't, she finally walked away, still sobbing. After she left, I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. Part of me felt guilty for being so harsh, but another part felt like it wasn't harsh enough. What did she think was going to happen? That I'd open the door, hug her, and agree to play dad to Liam's kid? The audacity was unbelievable. Over the next few days, I kept expecting her to show up again or send someone else to plead her case, but she didn't. Instead, I started getting messages from her friends. "Rachel's struggling, and you won't even help her?" One read. "One. You're really just going to abandon her after everything you two had?" said another. I ignored them at first, but they kept coming. It was like her friends were trying to guilt me into taking her back. They called me heartless, selfish, and every other name you can think of. Some of them even brought up our history, saying I owed it to her because of all the years we'd spent together. But here's the thing. Rachel wasn't just someone I dated for 5 years. She was someone who betrayed me in the most personal way possible. She didn't just hurt me. She tore apart my trust and left me questioning everyone around me. I didn't owe her anything, and I wasn't about to let anyone make me feel otherwise. By the end of the week, I'd blocked every one of her friends who had messaged me. I didn't have the energy to argue with people who clearly didn't care about what I'd been through. If they wanted to support Rachel, that was their choice. But I wasn't going to be part of it. That chapter of my life was over, and no amount of guilt tripping was going to drag me back into it. However, Rachel didn't stop. Neither did her friends. After she showed up at my door and I shut her down, it was like a switch flipped. They doubled down, flooded my socials, calling me names and throwing guilt trips left and right. "You're such a coward for leaving Rachel when she needs you most," one message read. Another said, "You're less of a man for not stepping up." The entitlement in their words was mind-blowing. Some of Rachel's friends started leaving nasty comments on my work profile where I'd shared some professional achievements. That was my breaking point. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of messages, voice recordings of phone calls, even the fake accounts they were using to harass me. It was exhausting, but I had this gut feeling things were going to get worse before they got better, and I wanted to be ready. And I was right. Rachel found a way to throw another wrench into my life. I was sitting at my desk at work when I got a call from an unknown number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. On the other end was a man who introduced himself as Rachel's lawyer. I froze for a second. Rachel's lawyer? What could she possibly want now? I asked him to cut to the chase. He said Rachel wanted to discuss a child support agreement. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Child support? For a kid that wasn't even mine? I told him flat out that there had to be some mistake. "I'm not the father of that child, and Rachel knows it," I said. The lawyer paused, probably not expecting me to be so direct. He asked if I'd be willing to meet to clear things up. I wasn't thrilled about it, but I figured it was better to confront this head-on than let it drag out.
So I took the afternoon off and met him at his office. When I arrived, he greeted me politely, but I could tell he wasn't fully clued in on the situation. He started with the usual lawyer spiel about responsibility, how Rachel was struggling as a single mother, and how stepping up would mean a lot for everyone involved. I let him talk for a while, but when he finally gave me a chance to respond, I didn't hold back. "Let me stop you right there," I said, pulling out the folder I'd brought with me. Inside were all the receipts, screenshots of Rachel's messages with Liam, the video of Liam bragging about sleeping with her, and copies of every harassment message I'd received from her and her friends. I laid them out on the table, one by one. "This is the truth," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "Rachel cheated on me for 2 years with Liam. She got pregnant with his child and tried to lie about it being mine. When I left, she and her friends harassed me for months. I've got the proof right here." The lawyer leaned forward, flipping through the evidence. His expression shifted from professional to uncomfortable the further he got. By the time he reached the last page, he looked like he'd just realized he was on the losing side of a fight. But then, as if he wasn't already grasping at straws, he added, "Rachel mentioned something else. She said you were emotionally abusive during the relationship. That's why she's struggling to make ends meet now." For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. "Excuse me?" I asked, my voice steady but laced with disbelief. "She claimed that part of the reason she reached out for support was because your behavior during the relationship left her without a safety net," he said, avoiding eye contact. I let out a dry laugh. "So, let me get this straight. She cheats on me for 2 years, tries to pass off another guy's kid as mine, harasses me when I walk away, and now she's spinning some sob story to make me look like the bad guy?" The nerve. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly regretting bringing it up. "Look, I'm just relaying what she told me," he said. I grabbed my folder and stood, giving him one last look. "If Rachel or her friends keep this up, I'll make sure their lies come with legal consequences. This ends now." The lawyer nodded, clearly rattled. "Understood," he said, gathering the documents into a neat stack. "I'll need to speak with my client about this." "You do that," I said, walking out of his office without looking back. At that moment, I felt so damn angry. Rachel thinks she could drag me into her mess, but little did she know who she was playing with. I kept thinking about everything the lawyer talked about. The audacity of it all was mind-blowing. I couldn't let it go. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my phone and called Rachel. She picked up almost instantly, her voice cautious but annoyingly sweet, like she'd been expecting me to cave. "I wasn't sure if you'd want to talk." I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Rachel, what the hell is this about child support?" I snapped. "I just got out of a meeting with your lawyer, and I want to know what kind of fantasy land you're living in where you think I'm paying for your kid." Her tone shifted immediately. "Look, I didn't know he was going to reach out to you like that," she said, stumbling over her words. "I'm in a really tough spot, and I thought maybe—" She trailed off, like she realized mid-sentence how ridiculous she sounded. "You thought maybe what?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You thought maybe I'd just roll over and be your safety net? After everything you've done? Let me make one thing clear, Rachel. That kid is not mine. I don't owe you anything. Not money, not time, not even a damn text back. You made your choices, and you don't get to drag me into your mess because Liam bailed on you." She let out a shaky breath, and I could hear her trying to hold it together. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said quietly. I don't have anyone else to turn to. My parents won't help, and Liam, he's gone. I'm doing this all on my own." I laughed, cold and bitter. "And whose fault is that, Rachel? You cheated, lied, and tried to pass off someone else's kid as mine. And now you're coming back to me because you're out of options? That's not my problem. It hasn't been my problem since the day I walked out." She started crying then, sniffling into the phone. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't know what else to do. Sorry doesn't fix this," I said flatly. "You need to stop. Stop calling me. Stop sending people after me, and stop trying to manipulate your way into my life. You don't get to come back from this. We're done, Rachel. For good." I hung up before she could say anything else and tossed my phone onto the passenger seat. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't from regret. It was from the sheer nerve she had to even think I'd entertain her nonsense. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I'd truly shut the door on her and all the chaos she brought into my life. And it felt damn good. A few days later, I got a formal letter from that lawyer. It was brief and to the point. There would be no further attempts at contact from Rachel or her friends. He also mentioned that Rachel had decided to move to another city to start fresh. There was even an apology included, though I doubted it came from Rachel herself. When I read the letter, I didn't feel vindicated or triumphant. I just felt relief. The chapter with Rachel was finally, officially closed. There would be no more messages, no more harassment, No more lawyers trying to guilt me into taking responsibility for a child that wasn't mine. So, the drama had finally quieted down, but rebuilding trust, that was the real challenge. Every time I met someone new, the thought lingered. What if they're hiding something too? But I wasn't going to live in paranoia. Rachel had already taken enough from me, and I refused to let her take my future too. I focused on what I could control, hitting the gym, throwing myself into work, and spending time with people who actually cared about me. Slowly but surely, I started feeling like myself again. One night, while I was out with some friends, Matt brought up dating. "You back in the game yet?" he asked. I smirked. "Not even close." "Come on, man," he said, rolling his eyes. "Not every woman is like Rachel. Don't let one bad apple ruin the whole thing for you." I didn't commit to anything then, but his words stuck. He wasn't wrong. I wasn't going to let Rachel's betrayal write the rest of my story. A couple of weeks later, Chloe invited me to a party. "Look, no pressure," she said. "It's not a setup. Just come hang out, relax, and have a good time for once." I almost bailed, but something told me to go. And honestly, I'm glad I did. The vibe was chill. No awkwardness, no expectations, just good people. That's when I met someone. She wasn't flashy or trying too hard. She was just real. We talked for hours about everything and nothing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe around someone. Am I jumping into something serious? Number. But I'm open to seeing where it goes. For now, I'm focusing on myself, but it feels good to know that not everyone is like Rachel. Sometimes, you just have to close one chapter to start a better one. And trust me, this new chapter, it's already off to a way better start.